Humanist one and trait theories, and I'm now going to finish up with social cognitive. Let's get this slideshow going. Oops, a little slow starting the clock there, sorry. Okay, this should be quick because we talked about at least some of this in class. I think second period we got through all of it, or almost all of it. Fourth period we got through 2 of the 3 theories, and of course sixth period we got through 1 of them. My slow group. Love you guys so much. By the way, Karen, I saw your brother in the mall. He seems good. Anyway, that's all I got. Here we go. Social cognitive. You've got Albert Bandura and reciprocal determinism. We talked about him in all of the classes. He's the most important. You've got Julian Rotter and social learning theory. And you have Walter Mischel kind of talking about trait, situation, interaction. And my fear is that with trait theories and social cognitive, that these are the least memorable of the theories. That Freud and the behaviorists and the humanists are all easier to they stand out more, and that these are going to be the ones you forget. So I think it's when you're studying, that's important to note, like which ones are going to be easy for me, which ones are going to be hard, and so focus on the ones that are harder. For this, you want to remember what unites all 3. And it is, of course, cognition and environment together, that our personality is a function of what's going on in our head and what's going on in the environment. Okay, social cognitive with Bandura. I'm going to be super quick here because we did this pretty well in all the classes on Friday. From Stanford, he's famous for the Bobo doll. He's important both as a learning theorist and a cognitive theorist. You should understand what that means. I'm not going to explain it again here. I think I talked about it in class. But what does it mean to say someone is a learning theorist? What does it mean to say someone is a cognitive theorist? His big theory in terms of personality was reciprocal determinism, that behavior, environment, and cognitive factors all influence each other. His key idea is self-efficacy, the expectancy of how effective a person's efforts will be on a given task. To be distinguished from, yes, exactly, self-esteem, not the same thing. Okay, Julian Rotter. I don't think I did a great job explaining this one, so let me take another stab at it now. Julian Rotter is really, his theory is called social learning theory, and the key terms for him would be expectancies and locus of control. And expectancy is very similar, actually, to Bandura's ideas about self-efficacy. So he said personality is really very simple. It's just a stable set of how you are likely to respond to situations, your potential responses. And the key idea for him is our expectancy. How we the consequences we expect from our actions affect our motivation to act and affect our personality. So an expected effect is our kind of subjective assessment of, well, what's going to happen when I do this? And if you think about that statement I just made, what's going to happen when I do this? That is similar to Bandura's idea of self-efficacy. Bandura's self-efficacy is, okay, if I try to fix this, change this flat tire, I'm good at that, I'm going to be able to do it. Or, I'm awful at mechanical things, I'm not going to be able to do it. So it's social learning theory because he says, we learn, we seek reinforcement, we try to avoid punishment, but we do that with expectancies. We face each situation making this kind of subjective assessment that our behavior is going to lead to a particular reinforcement. We do that based on past experience and our own cognition. So we're not perfect at judging that. It's subjective. That's where the cognition comes in, and what differentiates this theory from, say, a pure behaviorism of Skinner, where he doesn't have this subjective assessment thing. And I would sit and kind of maybe replay everything I just said, because that's a fairly clear explanation, but it's not a simple one. You need to kind of sit with how is Rotter different from Skinner, and how is he similar to but a little different from Bandura. So like I've already said, expectancy is similar to self-efficacy with Bandura. Key idea for Rotter is locus of control. And we've talked about that in a previous unit. Locus of control is your subjective assessment of what is likely to determine events. Do you think you are responsible for the consequences of your actions, or do you think outside forces determine it? So when you add that locus of control idea, whether you have an internal or external focus, it kind of adds meat to his idea of expectancies. And that's really the core of his theory. So if you stop and think about, okay, what is Rotter really saying? He's saying people tend to approach situations with a set of potential responses. We're not all the same. And we have learned in our past that in our lives it seems that external forces determine what's likely to happen to us versus internal locus of control. Here in America, we're taught, we can achieve anything, that we make our own destiny. So we emphasize internal locus of control. In other societies, especially more traditional ones, where life is hard and you don't have a lot of opportunity to move beyond the village in which you grew up in, and things like scarcity and weather or war have a big impact on your survival and success. Say Syria in the last 6 years during the Civil War, then an external locus of control is probably appropriate, and you are more fatalistic, like, hey, what's going to happen is going to happen, and I don't really control it. So it's not that an internal or external locus of control is right or wrong, either one of them. It's just that your experiences in life give you one or the other. Okay, that was a lot of talking. When I can't interact with you and kind of check in, see that you understand it, I just tend to keep babbling. But I hope you get that idea. I think that's a better explanation than I did in class. All right, moving on. Rotter said that, especially in America, the more successful and content people tend to have an internal locus of control. I, for one, would question whether that would be true in societies where living conditions are harsh. I think that's a very Western-centric idea, but I haven't read that anywhere. I just decided that myself. And lastly, Walter Mischel, famous for the marshmallow test, which is not a part of this personality stuff, but very interesting test. He asked the question, is behavior due to the person, their traits, or to the situation? And you can ask that question in terms of what Skinner would have said, which is it's purely the situation. But Skinner would have said over time, people's personality is learned, so they do develop a personality, according to Skinner, but it's entirely based on the environment. Mischel's take on it was a little bit different. He said people don't really have personality traits, learned or not, innate. Their behavior is much more situational. So he disagreed with the trait theorists and most people who said personality traits are consistent and stable. He said behavior is a function both of our traits, or what he called behavioral signatures, and the situation. He had quite a bit of impressive empirical evidence that people don't behave consistently. So the book talked about you can have somebody whose personality trait is they're outgoing, they're talkative, they're sociable, but at a party they're going to be outgoing. In the lunchroom, cafeteria, they're going to be outgoing. Maybe out in the parking lot after school, but at a church service or a funeral or in a classroom, they might be much more subdued and quiet because that's what's appropriate in the situation. So he said we don't have traits so much as behavior signatures, kind of if-then situational behavioral reactions. So like, if it is appropriate to be sociable and outgoing, then I will be. Or an introverted person might be, if it is appropriate to be outgoing and sociable, I'm still not going to be, except in extreme situations where, like at a party or something like that, or maybe only among my close friends. So again, the key thing with him is it's much more the interaction of a person's traits or behavior signatures and the situation. Okay, critique of social cognitive. As a negative, personality is more complex than just cognition in the environment. Out of all the theories, theirs is probably the most fragmented. That they're good at explaining what they try to explain, but they don't really have a coherent, full theory of personality. On the positive side, it's the most testable of the theories we talked about. A lot of empirical support. And in therapy, social cognitive theory has proven very useful. The therapy component of it is called CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. And that has been, it's probably one of the most prominent types of therapy today for children and adults with undesirable behaviors and getting them to change that. Use some reinforcement, so that's the behavioral part, to reinforce the proper behavior, and you might use some punishment of the negative behavior. But you also train the individual to go through a certain set of thought processes to encourage the proper behavior. So it's very useful in that way. And that's it. Wow, 11 minutes, quick theory, or quick lecture. Hope that was clear. Good luck on the test. Email me with any questions. I did not cover the last sections of the book, behavioral genetics and assessing traits, assessing personality, but those are still fair game for the test. See you in class sometime Monday or Tuesday. Bye.